Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Last Rodeo, 2025, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. In the dust-choked winds of the American heartland, where old boots still carry the echoes of glory days and cracked leather reins whisper tales of courage, one man stands at the crossroads of redemption and ruin. He's not your fresh-faced underdog chasing stardom. He's weathered, worn, and shackled by the mistakes of a past that refuses to loosen its grip. The story gallops forward not with youthful exuberance, but with the urgent, aching resolve of a grandfather fighting the final battle of his life, not for glory, but for the fragile promise of a second chance. At its core, this is a tale about legacy, about how one generation's sins can ripple into the next, and how love, even when twisted by pride and silence, might still find a way to ride again. It's a story wrapped in denim and sweat, but it's powered by something far deeper than rodeo dust or championship buckles. It's driven by a man trying to rewrite the ending of his own myth, a man who once let go when he should have held on, now grappling with the terrifying knowledge that this ride might be his last chance to make anything right. The tale begins in the quiet fields of Oklahoma, where Joe Wainwright lives a life defined by the silence between creaks in the floorboards and the weight of old trophies gathering dust. Once a legend in the bull riding circuit, Joe walked away from it all: fame, danger, family. Especially family. His daughter, Sally, hasn't spoken to him in over a decade. And his grandson, Billy, knows him only from faded photos and overheard anger. But everything changes when the family receives devastating news. Billy has a rare brain tumor, and treatment isn't just expensive, it's borderline impossible under their insurance plan. Suddenly, the past becomes the only path forward. Joe, a man whose body now aches at the thought of a saddle, makes a decision that startles everyone around him. He's going back in. Back to the circuit. Back to the bulls. Not as a mentor, not as a washed-up guest of honor, but as a rider. His friends call it suicide. His daughter calls it selfish. But Joe knows what he's doing, and he's not looking for approval. He's looking for redemption, one last ride to win the kind of money that could change everything for Billy. But re-entering a world that's moved on without him is no easy feat. The arenas have changed. The bulls are faster, meaner. The crowd, once full of fans screaming his name, now barely recognizes his weathered face. The kids riding now are hungry, fearless, and they don't want some old cowboy slowing things down. But Joe isn't alone in his mission. His old friend Charlie, a legendary bullfighter with his own regrets and secrets, steps up to help. There's humor between them, the kind that comes from surviving 1,000 beatdowns together. But beneath the laughter lies a shared pain, one they've never quite put words to. As Joe begins his journey back into the circuit, the film pulls us deeper into a world few truly understand, a brutal ballet of muscle, timing, and nerve, where 8 seconds can feel like eternity, and one wrong move can mean never walking again. The cinematography here is electric, capturing the chaos and thrill with a visceral intensity that grips your chest and won't let go. GoPro angles mounted on horns, slow-motion shots of dirt flying as riders are flung into the air. It's the kind of visual storytelling that doesn't just show you the sport, it hurls you into it. Yet the most gripping moments aren't on the dirt. They're in the quiet tension of hospital rooms, the awkward silences of broken relationships, and the trembling conversations between a man trying to become the father he never was and a daughter who isn't sure she can ever forgive him. Sally, portrayed with aching honesty, doesn't play the role of the tearful damsel. She's angry, hardened, protective. And when Joe returns, trying to play the hero after years of absence, her walls don't come down easily. But little by little, through bruises, both physical and emotional, something begins to shift. Billy, a quiet, introspective boy with a courage far beyond his years, begins to ask questions about his grandfather. Why did he leave? What made him quit? And more importantly, what's making him come back now? The film never rushes these moments. It lets the relationships unfold like a slow waltz, full of missed steps and nervous glances, until eventually they find a rhythm worth dancing to. And just when you think you know where it's all going, when the training montages and rekindled bonds begin to warm the edges of the screen, the ground shifts. An accident during a qualifying ride leaves Joe with a shattered rib and a warning from the doctor. Another fall could be fatal. He hides the injury, of course. That's what old cowboys do. But the danger escalates, and with each ride, the toll becomes more evident, not just physically, but emotionally. He's pushing against time, against pain, and against the clock that's ticking not only for Billy's treatment but for Joe's own body. It's here that the film reveals its emotional anchor. This isn't a sports drama. It's a reckoning. The story peels back layer after layer, exposing regrets Joe has buried for decades. His abandonment of Sally, his failure to support his wife in her final days, the choices he made out of fear, pride, and ego. These moments are portrayed with gut-wrenching honesty, without melodrama. No soaring soundtrack cues, just quiet truths finally spoken in parking lots, backrooms, and under starlit skies. And still, the final ride looms. Qualifying for the Grand Nationals would mean a shot at the kind of prize money that could fund Billy's surgery and then some. But the risk is astronomical. The bull he's set to ride, nicknamed Judgment Day, is an infamous beast, a living freight train with a reputation for destroying even the youngest, strongest competitors. Everyone tells Joe not to do it. Charlie pleads with him. Sally begs him. Even Billy, wide-eyed and wiser than any child should have to be, says he doesn't want the money if it means losing the grandfather he's just gotten to know. But there's no turning back now. The climactic sequence doesn't try to dazzle with overproduced flair. Instead, it builds tension through restraint. Every breath in the arena hangs heavy. Joe mounts the bull. The chute creaks open. And for 8 breathtaking seconds, time seems to freeze. The camera never leaves him, his face a storm of pain, determination, and something almost like peace. He holds on. And when it ends, when the dust clears, he collapses. The final act is a quiet one. No stadium cheers. No trophy. Just a hospital bed, a stitched-together family, and a small miracle. Joe survives. Not unscathed, but alive. And more importantly, changed. Billy gets his surgery. Sally finds her voice. And Joe, finally, learns that the ride wasn't about proving he was still a champion. It was about showing that sometimes the hardest thing isn't holding on, it's showing up. The story leaves you with tears, yes, but not from sadness. From release. From the knowledge that even broken people can find healing. That time lost can sometimes be reclaimed, even if only in fragments. And that love, once thought buried under the weight of past mistakes, can still rise when called upon. This isn't a film that reinvents the genre. It walks familiar paths, redemption arcs, family drama, one-last-shot narratives, but it walks them with authenticity, with heart, and most importantly, with purpose. It doesn't aim to dazzle you with spectacle. It wants to remind you of something simpler, that every person deserves a second chance, and that sometimes the greatest victories happen off the field, in quiet living rooms, between people finally learning to listen. The emotional truth of this film lingers long after the credits roll. It's the kind of story that speaks to fathers and daughters, to those grappling with regret, and to anyone who's ever wished for just one more opportunity to make things right. Its strength lies not in the bulls or the dirt, but in the humanity behind the ride. In the simple, powerful question it asks, what would you risk to give the ones you love the future they deserve? If that question hit you in the gut, well, you're not alone. Thanks for watching, friends. If this story stirred something in you, give this video a like and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to ride again. And of course, hit subscribe for more deep dives just like this. Until next time, ride safe and ride true. The screen opens not with spectacle, but silence, an aging farmhouse surrounded by dry, golden fields under a wide Oklahoma sky. The hum of cicadas is the only soundtrack as the camera glides through a quiet home that seems caught in time. Framed photos, once proud and polished, now sit half-faded in dust. A pair of boots by the door, cracked and stiff from disuse. And in the center of it all, Joe Wainwright. He's in his late 60s, still broad-shouldered, but the years have chipped away at him. His movements are deliberate, slow, not just from age, but from the weight of memories. Once a household name on the rodeo circuit, Joe now spends his days tending to broken fences and empty beer bottles. The world has moved on. And so, it seems, has his family. Joe receives a letter, not the kind people send anymore. It's handwritten. Inside is a single photo of a boy with deep, intelligent eyes, and a note from Sally, the daughter he hasn't seen in over 10 years. The note is short, clipped, devoid of sentiment. Billy is sick. I didn't want to call. But you should know. That's it. No address. Just a return name and city. It's enough. Joe drives for hours, through small towns and winding backroads, until he reaches a modest suburban home. Sally doesn't open the door right away. When she does, her face hardens as if bracing for a blow. There's no hug. No tears. Just that same guarded tension she wore the day he left her and her mother behind to chase another championship. Billy, her son, stands just behind her, curious but cautious. The conversation is awkward, brittle. Joe tries small talk. Sally doesn't have the patience. She lays it all out. Billy has a tumor pressing against his optic nerve. It's operable, but the insurance won't cover the full cost. Experimental therapy could improve his odds dramatically, but it's not cheap. She's exhausted every option. Joe listens, then asks what she wants from him. Sally laughs, a sharp, painful sound, and says she doesn't want anything. She just figured he ought to know before it was too late. Billy watches them silently. He's 12, thoughtful beyond his years, and though he barely knows this old man, he senses something important happening. Later that night, Joe sleeps on the worn couch in Sally's den, staring at the ceiling. He replays old moments in his mind. Championship rides, locker room celebrations, the night he left home, the night he didn't return. His past isn't a highlight reel, it's a film of regrets. Morning comes early, and Joe is gone before the sun is up. But he doesn't head back home. Instead, he drives toward the old rodeo grounds outside of Tulsa. It's where legends once made names, and where ghosts now roam. The arena is still in use, but the faces are younger, brasher. Joe walks among them like a relic, his presence turning a few heads. Some recognize him. Most don't. He finds Charlie Crackshot McBride sitting near the bullpen, still wearing that same weathered cowboy hat, though his hair has turned more silver than straw. Charlie was Joe's closest friend, and once his fiercest rival. They share an embrace that says more than any words could. Joe tells him everything. Charlie listens. He doesn't interrupt. Then he laughs, big, booming, incredulous. You want to get back on a bull? At your age. Joe nods. Are you outta your damn mind? Charlie shouts. But Joe isn't joking. And by the end of the day, Charlie's got him back on a dummy bull, legs wobbling, muscles protesting. Every movement hurts. His body's a roadmap of injuries, but muscle memory kicks in. The way he grips the rope, the way his body shifts with imagined motion, it's still there. Buried. Rusty. But there. Back in town, Sally sees him again, uninvited. She wants none of it. This isn't about you proving something, she snaps. But Joe doesn't answer. He just pulls a flyer from his pocket, the date of a local qualifier. It's weeks away. Prize money's small, but it's a start. As training begins, the world of rodeo comes roaring back into focus. The film plunges us into a gritty, dangerous subculture where adrenaline mixes with tradition. Joe works out in makeshift gyms, runs laps around dusty tracks, and endures bruising practice sessions on bulls that barely tolerate his presence. Charlie coaches him with a mix of sarcasm and heart. "Your spine's made of chalk," he jokes, "but you've still got that crazy look in your eye." Word spreads, Wayne writes back. Most of the young riders laugh it off. Some offer snide advice. But there's one rider, Colt Morgan, a rising star with a chip on his shoulder, who doesn't find it funny. To him, Joe represents everything wrong with the old generation, washed-up men who couldn't let go. Their first meeting is tense. Colt mocks him. Joe doesn't rise to it. But the film plants the seeds of an unspoken rivalry, two men on opposite sides of the same dream. Meanwhile, Billy starts showing up at the practices. Quietly. At first, he just watches. Then, Joe invites him closer. They talk about bulls, about fear, about the difference between bravery and foolishness. The connection is slow building, delicate, but it's there. Billy starts to see Joe not as a legend or a mistake, but as a man trying to do something right. A tender moment comes when Billy asks Joe why he really left the rodeo all those years ago. Joe hesitates, then finally answers, "Because I was afraid. Not of the bulls. Of who I was when I wasn't riding." It's a line that hangs heavy, peeling back years of stoic armor. The day of the qualifier arrives. The arena is electric, full of noise and tension. Joe suits up, each strap and buckle a test of will. His name is called. He walks toward the gate like a soldier going to war. The bull waiting inside the chute is restless, mean, and massive. The gate flies open. The ride is chaos. Dust swirls. The crowd gasps. Joe holds on through raw instinct. Every bounce feels like his ribs might crack, but he keeps his balance, clenches his grip. 8 seconds. Then 9. He dismounts and stumbles. His body hits the ground hard. Silence. Then cheers. He did it. Charlie runs to him. He's grinning, proud, and terrified. Joe's face is pale. He hides the pain well, but something's wrong. He limps off with Billy supporting him, hiding the fact that he's torn something in his side. A cracked rib. Maybe worse. But he won't stop now. With the qualifier under his belt, he begins to rise through the ranks. Each ride is more brutal than the last. Each victory more costly. But something else is happening too. His relationship with Billy grows deeper. They watch old rodeo footage together. Talk about dreams. Joe starts opening up about Sally, how he let her down, why he couldn't face her after her mother died. Billy listens. Then he asks, "Do you think she'll ever forgive you?" Joe doesn't answer. Sally sees the change too. She tries not to show it, but the walls she's built begin to crack. She's still angry, yes, but there's something else underneath it. Fear. Fear that Joe's pushing himself toward an early grave. Fear that Billy will get attached and be crushed. She confronts Joe again. This time, she begs him to stop. She says she'd rather lose the money than lose him. But Joe only replies, "I left you once. I won't leave again." Charlie watches all this unfold with a quiet sadness. He's seen this story before, men chasing salvation through pain. He warns Joe, tells him to be smart. But he also knows there's no stopping a man chasing the only thing that still matters to him. Then the twist. During a routine practice, Joe is thrown hard, not in competition, just a warm-up ride. He lands awkwardly. There's a sickening crack. He doesn't get up right away. Charlie rushes to his side. Joe's face is clenched in agony, and he's rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis is sobering, a fractured rib and spinal compression. The doctor is blunt. Another fall like that, and he might not walk again. or worse. Sally is furious. She demands he stop. She says Billy needs a grandfather more than a martyr. But Billy speaks up, saying, "It's not just about me anymore, Mom. He's fighting for all of us." Joe, lying in a hospital bed, stares out the window. His body failing, his soul ignited. The upcoming regional event offers a significant prize pool. If he qualifies, he'll be eligible for the Nationals, the big one. Enough money to cover everything. But the risks are now astronomical. The next day, he checks himself out of the hospital against medical advice. Back at the rodeo camp, Charlie finds him sitting near the bullpen, arms wrapped tight, wincing every time he breathes. Joe turns and says quietly, "You still think I can't do it?" Charlie sighs, then nods. "No. I think you'll do it. That's what scares me." As the sun sets, the camera pulls back. Joe stands alone in the arena, wind blowing dust across the fence rails. He looks small, almost fragile. But in his eyes, something fierce still burns. The days blur into preparation. The regional rodeo is just days away, and while his bones scream in protest, there's a different kind of fire in his veins now. Something Joe hasn't felt since he was a young man with nothing but a saddle and a stubborn dream. But this time, it's not about winning a belt buckle. It's about something heavier, something more sacred. Redemption, family, and the chance to rewrite a story that's long haunted him. Sally watches him warily from the porch, arms folded, still balancing that line between concern and disappointment. Billy, however, buzzes with nervous energy. He's become Joe's shadow, watching his movements, mimicking them in secret, a quiet student to an old master. Charlie returns with good news. Joe's qualifier win got him a slot in the regional semifinals. It's not the final yet, but if he places in the top 5, he'll advance, and the prize money at stake will be more than enough for Billy's treatment. That word hangs in every conversation now. If. Joe's health deteriorates more with each passing day. His right hand trembles when he grips the reins. He walks with a limp he tries to hide. The hospital called. Twice. He hasn't answered. But he's never been more focused. He watches tapes at night, scribbles notes like a scientist studying variables. He trains slower, smarter, adjusting to every weakness his body throws at him. On the day of the semifinals, the air is electric with tension. Dust kicks up around the arena as dozens of riders prepare for the challenge. Joe's presence doesn't go unnoticed. Some respect him. Others sneer, particularly Colt Morgan, the rising star who hasn't forgotten the old man's return stole the spotlight he expected for himself. Colt's got youth, swagger, and the crowd's attention. But Joe? He has gravity. As the rides begin, one cowboy after another takes the gate. Falls, flips, scores. The leaderboard shifts with every ride. Then it's Joe's turn. The gate creaks open, and time seems to slow. The bull bolts forward, muscles coiled like a spring, trying to shake Joe off before the buzzer even begins. But Joe moves with uncanny precision, as if he can feel the animal's thoughts in his bones. He holds on through sheer instinct, battered but unbroken. When he dismounts, the crowd erupts. He lands 4th place. He's going to the finals. But back at the holding area, he collapses behind the stalls. Charlie rushes to him, sees the blood seeping through Joe's shirt from where the fractured rib has torn further into his side. Paramedics are called. Joe is taken in, barely conscious. Billy cries in the back seat of the truck, fists clenched, silent and scared. In the sterile light of the hospital, the truth finally catches up. The doctor's face is grim. Internal bleeding. Compounded spinal trauma. One more fall like that, and Joe might never walk again, if he even survives it. The doctor tells him, "You need surgery. Immediately." This isn't just a warning anymore, it's a countdown. Sally is there, silent by his side. She holds his hand for the first time in years. There are no fights now. No yelling. Just a quiet reckoning. "Please," she whispers. "We've already lost too much time." Joe listens. But that same silence lingers in his eyes, the one he wore before every ride, every impossible challenge. He knows what he's going to do. In the dead of night, he checks himself out of the hospital. Again. Charlie finds him the next morning, standing near the edge of the rodeo arena, the national finals just hours away. He's pale, wheezing with every breath, but the fire hasn't dimmed. "You're a damn fool," Charlie says. Joe grins. "Yeah, but I'm your damn fool." The final event is massive. Thousands in the stands. Cameras everywhere. Commentators rehashing his legendary past, questioning his present, speculating if this ride will be his last. Colt Morgan's riding too, dead set on claiming his moment. He tells a reporter, it's time the old legends stayed in the history books. Back at the prep area, Billy walks up to Joe. This time, it's not to ask questions, it's to say something he's never said before. "I believe in you." Joe swallows hard, choked with emotion. He pulls a small, leather-gloved hand into his. "You ride every bull like it's your last," he says. "But today? This one's for you." The gate clangs open. Joe is launched into chaos, the bull charging and twisting beneath him with a fury that seems almost personal. The seconds stretch. The arena is a blur of motion, dust, and held breath. Joe hangs on, barely, every muscle straining, every nerve screaming. Blood soaks his side. But he holds. 8 seconds. 9. He dismounts and collapses instantly. This time, he doesn't move. Medics swarm the arena. The crowd falls deathly silent. Cameras zoom in on his body, broken and limp in the dirt. Sally races from the stands. Billy tries to follow, stopped only by Charlie's hand holding him back, eyes red with fear. Joe is unconscious, barely breathing. Fade to black. Then, light. A white hospital room. Machines beeping softly. Joe wakes slowly, his face wrapped in confusion and pain. Sally is asleep in the chair beside him. Billy is curled up near her feet. Charlie stands at the window. Joe tries to speak, but it takes effort. His voice cracks. "Did I win?" Charlie turns, smiles. "You made second." Joe blinks, and a tear rolls down his cheek. Second place wasn't the title. But it came with enough prize money to cover Billy's treatment, and then some. And more importantly, it came with something even rarer, forgiveness. The following days are slow. Joe undergoes surgery. The doctors tell him walking again is uncertain. He listens, nods. But the fight is gone from his face. Not in defeat, but in peace. For once in his life, he doesn't have to chase the next ride. Billy begins his treatment. It's long, difficult. But Joe's there, every session, every tear, every laugh. They play cards in the hospital waiting room. Watch westerns late into the night. For the first time, Joe becomes a constant. Sally visits often. She brings old photos, slowly piecing together the fragments of a family long fractured. In one quiet moment, she places a hand on Joe's shoulder. "I was wrong," she says. "You didn't ride to prove something. You rode because you loved us." He doesn't answer. He just takes her hand. The final scenes drift between recovery and rebirth. Joe works with a physical therapist, struggling to move his legs. Every inch is earned. He teaches Billy how to rope, how to ride. Not bulls, not yet, but horses, slow and steady. The ranch back home becomes alive again. Fences are rebuilt. Dust swept off old photo frames. Months pass. The final scene unfolds at a small-town rodeo, not a national event, just a community fair. Billy, now stronger, steps into the junior rodeo competition, wearing a hand-me-down vest stitched with his grandfather's initials. Joe watches from the stands, sitting tall in his wheelchair, a quiet giant among the crowd. Billy rides, not perfectly, but with heart. When he stumbles, he gets back up. The crowd cheers. Sally claps, her eyes filled with tears. Joe smiles, not with pride, but with something deeper. Peace. The credits roll over a last lingering shot of the sun setting over the horizon, lighting up the worn wooden sign that reads, Wainwright Ranch. Beneath it, a simple addition freshly painted by hand, home of second chances. Some men wear their regrets like old leather, weathered, silent, and unspoken. Joe Wainwright was that kind of man. His presence wasn't built on volume or bravado, but on the kind of gravity that comes from enduring years of pain and pride. He wasn't just a cowboy, he was a ghost of a legacy, a living reminder of what it meant to fall and rise and fall again. Beneath the wide-brimmed hat and those stoic eyes, there lived a man haunted by choices he made under the blazing sun of a rodeo arena and the colder nights at home where silence was easier than confession. Joe had once been a name spoken with reverence, etched into silver belt buckles and framed in photographs above dusty fireplaces. But as time passed, the accolades turned to whispers, then to silence. It wasn't the injuries that broke him, nor the fading cheers. It was what he left behind. A family fractured. A son lost too soon. A grandson he never knew. And in the place of those losses, he built a wall, brick by stubborn brick. But even the thickest walls crack. And sometimes it takes the quiet courage of a child to pull those bricks down. Billy didn't arrive with dramatic flair. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to rattle the foundations of Joe's long-set routine. Quiet, observant, with a gaze far too old for his years, Billy was the kind of kid who'd already lived through more pain than most grown men. His diagnosis might have defined his world in medical terms, but what truly shaped him was resilience. He didn't just want to know his grandfather. He needed to understand the missing piece of his story, even if it came wrapped in scowls and silence. Every time Billy reached out, it was another small act of defiance against Joe's carefully constructed detachment. He asked questions Joe didn't want to answer. He sat through silences Joe intended to be intimidating. And when Joe tried to push him away with cold routines and gruff remarks, Billy stayed. His loyalty wasn't loud. It was steady. And that steadiness became the lever that shifted everything. Then there was Sally, Joe's daughter-in-law, bearing the kind of layered sorrow only a mother could carry. Grief, yes, but also the simmering ache of abandonment. She had every reason to hate Joe. For vanishing when her husband died. For never showing up when it mattered. And yet, beneath her bitterness, there remained a glint of the girl who once saw something strong and steady in her father-in-law. Her strength wasn't in forgiveness, but in standing her ground. In protecting her son. In refusing to let the past rewrite the present. She wasn't a villain. Nor was she a hero. She was human. Wounded and unyielding, trying to navigate a world where love had become complicated. But when she finally softened, it wasn't out of convenience. It was because she saw the change in Joe, the quiet acts of care, the sacrifices he made, the way he looked at Billy not as a burden but as a bridge to something better. Charlie, on the other hand, wore his loyalty like an old flannel shirt, comfortable, reliable, and always there when needed. He was the man who knew Joe before the fame, before the falls, before the silence. A friend, a brother in everything but blood, and the only person allowed to call Joe out without risking a fist to the jaw. Where Joe was flint, Charlie was kindling, quick to spark, quick to speak his mind, but always grounded in deep affection. Charlie's humor masked his worry. His sarcasm disguised his fear. He wasn't just helping Joe get back into shape. He was betting on a man he still believed in, even when Joe didn't believe in himself. But what made Charlie special wasn't just his loyalty. It was his ability to see people clearly. He saw Billy's quiet bravery, Sally's guarded heart, and Joe's internal war. And through it all, he never walked away. Then there was Colt Morgan, a flash in the pan by some standards, but to others, a symbol of the new world the rodeo had become. Young, brash, and hungry for a spotlight, Colt wasn't evil. He was ambition untempered by humility. His conflict with Joe wasn't born from hatred. It was born from a need to be seen, to prove he belonged, to take the throne he believed was rightfully his. Colt's swagger masked insecurity. His arrogance was armor. But beneath the showmanship was a rider who genuinely respected the sport, even if he didn't understand its soul. He rode like lightning, fast and loud. But when confronted with Joe's quiet dignity, Colt was forced to face something more powerful than applause: legacy. In many ways, the entire story unfolded like a weathered dance between legacy and loss, between the thunder of crowds and the whisper of family dinners gone cold. And within that dance, every character moved not just with purpose, but with pain. Billy was the heart, the emotional core that gave every choice weight. He didn't beg for sympathy. He didn't cry when it hurt. Instead, he showed up, every day, with hope in his eyes. Hope that this man he barely knew could be someone worth knowing. Someone who might care enough to stay. Joe tried to keep distance. He told himself it was for Billy's sake, that he was protecting the boy from the wreckage of his own past. But deep down it was fear. Fear of failing again. Fear of not being enough. Yet, the moment he chose to ride not for glory, but for Billy, that was when everything changed. That was when the legend became a man again. And what a man he was! Flawed. Stubborn. Brave. He limped through hospital corridors like a soldier wounded in battle but refused to surrender. He studied every bull's temperament like a scholar. He wore his pain like armor, but let it fall away, piece by piece, for one last ride. Not for the crowd, but for the people waiting in the quiet corners of his life. Sally's journey wasn't about softening. It was about rediscovering strength in compassion. She never stopped fighting for Billy. But what surprised her most was realizing she no longer had to do it alone. That the man she once saw as a ghost was willing to become a grandfather again. That maybe family wasn't about perfection, but about showing up when it mattered most. Charlie remained the unsung hero, never asking for thanks, always keeping the ship steady. He was the voice of reason, the laughter in the dark, the one who reminded Joe who he was when memory tried to blur the lines. Even Colt found his evolution. Watching Joe ride, bloodied, broken, unyielding, it shook something in him. Not fear, but perspective. A deeper understanding of what the rodeo truly meant. That it wasn't about beating the next man. It was about beating yourself. And sometimes, just staying on the bull was the real victory. Each character wove themselves into the fabric of the story not through speeches or grand gestures, but through choices. Through presence. Through the simple, powerful act of being there, even when it hurt. And in the final, quiet moments, when Billy stood in that small-town arena, wearing his grandfather's vest, facing the crowd with trembling hands, every character's journey came full circle. The legacy Joe feared he had ruined was now riding forward, stronger than ever. Not in the form of trophies, but in courage. Not in applause, but in love. They say a man can't outrun his past. But maybe, just maybe, he can ride alongside it, long enough to make peace. And when the dust finally settles, and the crowd goes home, what's left aren't just memories. What's left is family. They say every film has a soul before cameras roll. And for this story, it began with Neal McDonough quietly pulling his car over on a lonely road after a bout of deep emotional crisis. Battling depression, he realized he'd been bottling a question that cut deeper than any bull rider's fall. What would he do if his wife needed him? That moment sparked the seed of a screenplay, drafted within a week alongside his writing partner. a story born not from imagination, but from the raw, unguarded feeling of vulnerability his own life. His deep-rooted love for Western culture, echoing his Irish father's childhood on a horse ranch, and a decades-long passion for wearing cowboy hats became part of his identity on screen. When he finally donned the hat for filming, his wife reportedly quipped that he'd a face and a head for it. That combination of self-awareness and authenticity helped the story breathe. Early casting added rich texture. Jon Avnet, known for emotional staples like fried green tomatoes, became the director whose empathy McDonough trusted. Together they tailored the intimate restoration of family bonds, a vision sealed when Ruth McDonough, Neal's real-life wife, was cast as his on-screen spouse. That creative decision wasn't just convenient, it emerged from personal conviction. Neal had vowed never to kiss an on-screen co-star who wasn't his wife, so the romance scenes were small family affairs, filmed with a touch of idealism and awkward father-daughter commentary. "Dad, this is gross," the McDonough girls reportedly teased. They filmed through March and April 2024 in rural Oklahoma, Owasso, Collinsville, and the iconic Expo Square of Tulsa, with some scenes shot in Edna, Texas. Choosing these towns wasn't just practical, it was poetic. Collinsville's historic Silver Dollar Cafe became the setting for pivotal family moments, capturing small-town authenticity with every shot of worn menus and chipped mugs. Tulsa's Expo Square, the hub of PBR culture, lent its dusty arena and looming golden driller statue to the gripping finale. The production budget, estimated around $8 million, called for creativity rather than spectacle. That meant lean crews and long days, but the intention was always clear: focus on character, not fireworks. Cinematographer Dennis Lenore used nimble GoPros strapped to bulls and slow-motion lenses to pull us into the mouth of danger bull riding language, a choreography of survival built shot by shot. Collaboration with the Professional Bull Riders, PBR, Association added both authenticity and risk. They used real PBR personalities. Names like Dalen Swearingen, Ezekiel Mitchell, Dakota Lewis, and Eli Vastbinder appear briefly, but their involvement wasn't just cameo fluff. They used real bulls, proper bulls with personalities all their own, massive, sophisticated animals not easily choreographed. PBR oversaw every procedure in alignment with American humane standards, emphasizing the animals were elite athletes and not mistreated for drama. But filming live rides brings unpredictable elements. One shot involved a bull breaking through a gate slightly off camera, no crash or injury, but enough to make the crew pause and hold their breath. And then there's the human toll. The actors weren't immune. Neal McDonough, at nearly 60, spent weeks training, bruised and battered, wrestling with motions he'd abandoned decades ago. Mykelti Williamson, who portrays Joe's loyal friend Charlie, rode alongside him during practice rides, their bond evolving in pain and adrenaline. Aficionado reportedly loved the physical challenge, even restoring that old glory manhood with every muscle twinge. But nobody was invincible. On one practice day, Neal took a tech fall that didn't make the final cut, a warning shot of the stakes they were playing with. Then there's a delightful oddity. During the filming of the climactic arena kisses between Neal and Ruv, the director had to pause multiple times to accommodate wardrobe malfunctions. Their wedding rings caught on collars. Hats flipped off. One kiss took so long Neal grabbed a cold beer nearby to stay loose, and by the next take, his daughter snapped a photo, declaring, "Dad, too gross." Christopher McDonald as Jimmy Mack, part showman, part sly PBR official, added flair. Hiju, allowing camera rolls to naturally capture the grit and laughter of rodeo life. But not everything went off budget. The 2025 Memorial Day weekend release placed them directly against Mission Impossible. Final Rec franchise might doom box office returns. Yet McDonough maintained faith in the story, even as skeptics on Reddit mocked the timing. Beyond that glamorous or controversial, a few peculiar stretches of filming gave the story a strange charm. One early morning set in Owasso found a tornado warning causing the crew to scatter. No animals on set, but real fear in the air. Cameras captured that tension, and though cut from the final edit, tales persist of McDonough calmly herding crew into trailers while still in full costume, boots, hat, and spurs, getting ready to ride a bull again come rain or shine. Music, too, played an unconventional role. Composer Jeff Russo, known for emotional TV scores, wrote the first cue using a guitar, not orchestral strings, aiming to evoke a raw, earthy vibe. When director Avnet heard the result, he said it sounded like a desert breeze hitting an old barn door, and said, "That's the sound of truth." As filming drew to a close, an unplanned moment stood out. The penultimate rap dinner wasn't held in a studio catering hall. Instead, Avnet turned up at the Silver Dollar Cafe after hours, where they hosted a family-style feast for the cast and crew. Scrambled eggs, biscuits, beans, local pies, among booths flanked by posters of 1950s rodeo queens. McDonough reportedly told everyone, "This is our homemade Heartland moment," and a crew member later shared that was the only time they heard him cry, not from a scene, but from gratitude. Post-production had its own curiosities. The film uses occasional slow motion rendered at 60 frames per second, twice the standard, to highlight critical bull riding beats. But those shots had to be stabilized and color-graded separately, surfacing tiny twitches in the bull's eye and each grain of flying dirt. For one shot, they spent a full day stabilizing a close-up of Joe's boot sliding out of the stirrup, considering it a moment that would define him, a symbol of remorse and grit coalescing. Perhaps the most surprising legacy of the film's release came when McDonough and his wife became minority owners of the Austin Gamblers, an actual PBR team, just weeks after production rapidity. It was strange enough to see McDonough go from actor to owner, but it carried weight. This story didn't end with the credits. It launched a real-life investment in the world it portrayed. Even as critics labeled portions of the movie formulaic melodrama, many praised the authenticity of its visuals and performances, especially the PBR cameos. Avnet often credited that to one unconventional policy: we didn't rehearse the rides. We didn't tell the bulls what to do. We trusted the riders. And we trusted the animals. That trust, rare in family dramas, created unscripted intensity few filmmakers ever achieve. So here's the strangeness rolled into truth. A story born of roadside vulnerability becomes a filmed journey across real arenas, filmed with real bulls, directed with emotional honesty. A team eats diner food after rap, an actor becomes part owner of a PBR team, and a tornado scare becomes dinner tale. Somewhere between that first scribble and final credits, the production became much larger than any checklist, because it was built on love, risk, and the strange magic that happens when art meets life. What follows is a slow-burn emotional reveal. Over the next hour, dialogue unfolds in the shadows, the quiet hospital corridors, the flicker of streetlights in his daughter's driveway. These moments are both mundane and seismic. Joe's arrival brings no sparks, only the grinding friction of estrangement. And that friction is deliberate. The Washington Post review called the early pacing slow-paced with formulaic drama, but also acknowledged how performances like Mykelti Williamson's breath life into it. WashingtonPost.com. Brown stares, truncated sentences, half-finished apologies, all convey more than page-long monologues ever could. Then the grandson enters, the boy with that same dogged look in his eyes. His silence is more eloquent than any plea. As he inches into bull country, the camera shifts subtly. We see the saturation of color in the bleachers, the clatter of stirrups, as hopeful as a family photo drifting into view. This shift is the movie's pivot, from inner confrontation to relational reckoning. One key event swings everything, when Joe injures himself during a semi-final run. The fall isn't choreographed for dramatic effect. It's messy, abrupt. The cut to white hospital light is brutal. Then comes the confrontation, a terse exchange between father and daughter, where words aren't enough. "I left you once. I won't leave again." Emotional clarity is forged in silence, and critics noted the performance's genuine sincerity during these exchanges. When Sally refuses his entry into the finals, we're not given a hero monologue, just raw grief. The decision to re-enter the finals introduces an almost sacred space between determination and recklessness. The arena shots grow wider. The score, Jeff Russo's understated, guitar-driven themes, softens the edges between courage and obsession. The camera lingers on close-ups, Joe's clenched jaw, Sally's tear-cracked face, Billy's wide, fearful eyes. Emotions rise without words. A spectator might ask, is he riding for honor or atonement? The final ride cements the film's argument. True victory lies in reconciliation, not trophies. Joe's limp off the dirt might have read like defeat, if not for his granddaughter slipping his phone number into Billy's back pocket before the ride, a tiny gesture of faith restored. That cut wasn't in the script until the third week of filming. It emerged when Neal McDonough and Sarah Jones found real emotion in the scripted goodbye. Avnet allowed it to stay. That's filmmaking with the audience's heart in sight. Critically, that moment changed everything. Week 1 reviews praised the bull riding's energy. By week 3, early critics were whispering, this is more than a rodeo saga. It's an exploration of dignity earned through suffering. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film held a solid, serviceable melodrama label, but even that review praised its visceral effectiveness when the story dared take us beyond the ring. boxofficehype.com/wikipedia.org +1 boxofficehype.com +1. But what truly elevated the audience's response was the film's emotional denouement. When Joe wakes up, only to learn he placed second, and that the prize pool covers Billy's surgery, the film avoids triumphant crescendo. Instead, it hits an emotional resonance, relief, not heroic triumph. CinemaScore reported a rare A. Audiences weren't impressed by spectacle, but moved by sincerity. The climax maintains ambiguity. Will Joe walk again? It doesn't matter. We've watched him walk back into family. The final scenes, a boy in borrowed gear, a mounted LCD scoreboard noting his ride score, a crowd clapping, his mother smiling in tears, make the rodeo a metaphor. We leave with the understanding that every small step matters more than the giant leaps we imagine. One of the most interesting critical perspectives lies in how the film navigates masculinity. In an evocative essay, Tim Grierson noted that rodeo isn't just sport. It's a realm where men connect with machines, animals, and each other through ritualized risk. That intensity becomes a conduit, not for violence, but for vulnerability. Medium.com. The result? A traditionally macho genre is transformed into an intimate canvas of reconnection. Viewed through that lens, Joe's final ride doesn't symbolize bravado. It reflects survival. It becomes the narrowing of self, from mythic cowboy to father, grandfather, survivor. The bull's power diminishes, giving way to the weight of his purpose. That interplay won praise from those who expected chest-thumping drama, only to find subtle, often unspoken transformation. This intentional subversion shows up again and again, in production design, in accidental moments captured by off-camera horseshoes rattling a gate. The movie hints at ritual, not adrenaline. A slow pan of an empty chute, the way dust spills beneath Joe's boot, the tautness in Charlie's eyebrows. Film critics flagged these as moments of real texture, elevating the film from soap opera to elegy. Medium.com +1 TheGuardian.com +1. Beyond craft, the film's release timing carried weight. Debuting opposite a Tom Cruise blockbuster led some to say the studio might have been insane, but user discussions on Reddit lauded the counter-programming. This doesn't look bad at all, and could make a ton of cash in the August doldrums. Reddit.com. And audiences weren't wrong. By Memorial Day weekend, the film's word-of-mouth buzz countered box office forecasts. Critically, the emotional arc is what allowed viewers to forgive a few narrative clichés, because those clichés are tools, not crutches. Critics commented that, while the first half was formulaic, the performances, especially Mykelti Williamson, infused life into the story. WashingtonPost.com. That's important. In genre films, emotional authenticity can redeem structural familiarity. On a cultural level, the film taps into a deep longing for simple stories that reckon with suffering, that commit to the idea that redemption is earned in everyday acts. Not a single tear is wasted on hubris. Instead, grief and forgiveness flow in equal measure, layered like sediment in the landscape of this small-town Oklahoma setting. We can see this in the final production choice. The penultimate frame doesn't show Joe triumphantly lifting a buckle, but a sunrise behind the Wainwright Ranch sign, dust settling, gates rusting. Nature doesn't care about box scores, but it thrives on cycles. The director left the score low, letting ambient sounds, the creak of boards, a distant crow, fill the silence. The visual metaphor is unmistakable. Redemption isn't explosive. It's silent regeneration. And the critics whispered back, shifting their tone. Gone were the words, serviceable melodrama. In its place, a satisfying ride, raw emotional resonance, gritty yet hopeful, and that rare CinemaScore grade A that proves a film connected not just with critics, but with the public soul. Lights come up on an early spring morning in rural Oklahoma. Overhead, the sky is pale, a silent promise of long, grueling days ahead. It's March 2024, and the dusty streets of Owasso and Collinsville are waking to something extraordinary. The transformation of ordinary cafes and fairgrounds into the beating heart of a rodeo drama. Crews hustle. Cameras roll. And there, in the middle of the frame, stands Neal McDonough, a man about to step back into the saddle in more ways than one. McDonough's journey to this point wasn't born from ambition. It was born from a moment of vulnerability. After finishing another film, he'd pulled off the highway, shaken by depression. In that stillness came the question, if his wife needed someone, where would he be? Within the week, he and his writing partner drafted the first pages of what would become this story. Reddit.com +3 TulsaWorld.com +3 TulsaWorld.com +3 EST Wikipedia.org +44Filming.com +4FactsMostly.com +4MissanAntonio.com. It was a story less about bull riding, more about rebuilding. But it needed a place to breathe, somewhere authentic. Enter Oklahoma. Thanks to state rebates and the welcoming arms of local towns, shooting across Owasso and Collinsville began in earnest. The Silver Dollar Cafe, early one April morning, is reinvented as a Texas bar, complete with weathered booths and menu boards. It became our living room, says the cinematographer Dennis Lenore, snapping setup shots. Locals peek in, curious. Their town is on the big screen now. Film tourism footage in the making a 2zfilminglocation.com. The cast gathers on Crescent Street, beneath low-hanging wires that crackle with pre-dawn electricity. McDonough, wearing a cowboy hat he's worn in previous Western roles, smiles at the irony. The Boston-born actor, once far from Texan, has finally come home to a script that fits more than any other. His wife and co-producer, Ruv, is there, playing his on-screen partner. That casting choice wasn't just sentimental, it was moral. McDonough refuses to simulate on-screen romance with anyone else. He earned a round of applause when he mumbled, "I needed one more take," after a reluctant smooch during their first shoot day. And yes, their kids teased him mercilesslycircus.com +2 missanantonio.com +2 theepictimes.com +2. Each morning, Jon Avnet, who helmed Fried Green Tomatoes and Justified, steps on set with purpose. His direction is gentle but firm. Someone notes how he's built careers on emotional authenticity. This time, he's digging deep. "We needed emotion to feel lived in," he tells a PA over cups of diner coffee. McDonough, nodding, agrees. The film isn't a rodeo show. It's a reckoning. missanantonio.com +1 tulsaworld.com +1. Back in Collinsville, the Silver Dollar doors swing as filming pauses for lunch. But it's not steak and salad. The crew gathers around biscuits and beans, the kind of comfort food that's hard to serve in catering halls. Nothing glitzy, just old-fashioned hospitality and a wrap party vibe under bright cafe lights. Bull riding scenes require a different rhythm. The PBR, Professional Bull Riders, team shows up, Dalen Swearingen among them. The bulls aren't props. They're unpredictable forces of nature. On one shot day, a bull smashes through a gate off camera, a reminder of how real and raw this is. MovieInsider.com +7 WashingtonPost.com +7Angel.com +7. Cameramen, braced against wooden railings, hold their breath. It's chaos captured. Fear and beauty wrapped in sinew and muscle, just as McDonough and Avnet intended. When the cameras roll again, they capture a single button: record reality. Meanwhile, Mykelti Williamson, Joe's lost and found confidant Charlie, is riding beside McDonough. Their friendship off-camera, a tapestry of shared laughter that seeps into the final edit. No one mentions it on camera, but it shapes the shoot. Cold hands trigger extra takes. The weather humbles the ambition. But it also beats into the performances that same rawness the story required. Between scenes, McDonough and his wife host impromptu rehearsals. They'd watch playback, adjusting silences. "Your pause here," she'd say. "Let me hear your heart in that moment." And so, they would freeze. Work in the barn. Tweak the line, tweak the look. It's the kind of care usually reserved for off-screen intimacy. But here, it's the very center of the movie. Kilmacrackers laugh when they recall the wardrobe drama. Hats flipped in the aisle. Boots that didn't fit. And the infamous scene, his first on-screen kiss, where his own daughter behind the monitor yelped, "Dad, this is gross." It took 8 takes, and yes, beer, to get it just right. Jon Avnet often praised that scene, not because of intimacy, but because of trust. "This," he said, "is theater of the real. We're not pretending." Christopher McDonald, playing the charismatic PBR official Jimmy Mack, brings a practiced ease to the rodeo environment. His career runs from Happy Gilmore to Thelma and Louise. On set, he keeps things light. Quick jabs with Neal, spur-of-the-moment ad-libs that make genuine laughs echo through the setten.wikipedia.org +2 tulsaworld.com +2 east wikipedia.org +2 washingtonpost.com. Production wrapped in April, but the story didn't end there. In post-production, editor Tom Costantino and Dennis Lenore labored over slow-motion sequences. One shot, a close-up of Joe's boot slipping, took an entire day to stabilize and grade. It wasn't just a fall, it was a reflection of everything Joe was risking. WashingtonPost.com +3 missanantonio.com +3 and .wikipedia.org +3. Composer Jeff Russo watched it and choked up. "This is the moment," he whispered. "The buck stops here." Russo then composed on guitar, seeking a sound Avnet described as the creak of an old barn door, capturing both fragility and endurance. en.wikipedia.org. Few filmmakers know how to use silence like that. Instead of orchestral swells, Russo's theme breathes quietly, building with gravel and whispering wood. They show it to test audiences in late April. Hands grip seats at the fall. Tears arrive quietly at the hospital finale. A ranch sign, freshly painted, reads something like Wainwright Ranch, home of second chances. Someone in test screenings sobs. A rare moment, where a rodeo film feels sacred. Meanwhile, off-camera, McDonough and Ruv make another commitment. They become minority owners in the Austin Gamblers, a real PBR team. It's proof the story didn't end at the wrap. They're buying into the culture they portrayed. n.wikipedia.org +7 missanantonio.com +7 movieguide.org +7. It's poetic. The actor rides beyond the screen and enters the arena he filmed. Press days bring deeper revelations. In interviews, McDonough credits his faith, his mental health fight, his father's Irish ranching background as fuel. Williamson speaks of ritual, sibling loyalty, redemption. McDonald laughs in press rooms and admits he's still rewatching scenes where his eyes missed. The cast sells more than tickets, they sell honesty. On Memorial Day weekend, the film premieres nationwide, against a Mission Impossible juggernaut. Some called it crazy, others lauded it as counter-programming. But the movie stands tall. Critics nod to its formulaic roots, yet praise its sincerity and visuals. Audiences give an A cinema score, talking about the rodeo scenes, sure, but mostly about hearts reopened and love rekindled. en.wikipedia.org. In the weeks after release, small towns claim their chapters. Collinsville welcomes busloads of tourists. A cafe posts a sign, "We were in that movie." McDonough's script is reprinted. He reads letters from dads, daughters, grandfathers who saw their grit reflected and healed. The production crew, scattered to other sets, looks back at those cold mornings and says they filmed something real. So what's the strangest fact in all this? That a film about bull riding, a sport driven by adrenaline and noise, had its heart in silence, in pauses, in the quiet click of a boot on concrete. It's a movie born of depression, filmed amidst tornado warnings, made sacred over beans and biscuits, and rooted in a truth few see coming in a rodeo flick. Redemption is earned off the ground. When the credits roll over that dusty sign, the audience doesn't just walk out of a theater. They step out into their lives, thinking, maybe I can ride again. Maybe it's not too late. Dawn breaks over the wind-swept horizon of rural Oklahoma. As the pale light stretches across the open fields, the air hums with something ancient, like stories buried in the soil. In the Last Rodeo, this land doesn't just serve as background. It breathes, pulses, and listens. It becomes a character of its own, shaping and reflecting the emotional journey of its protagonists. From dusty barn stalls to cavernous rodeo arenas, the settings are as emotionally charged as the people who inhabit them. Every fence, tree, and sunset speaks of longing, redemption, and hard-earned grace. The decision to film in locations like Owasso, Collinsville, and Tulsa wasn't just logistical. These places carry history in their architecture, memory in their landscapes. You can feel it in the creak of a diner chair or the quiet of an abandoned barn. The town of Collinsville, with its weathered storefronts and the aged Silver Dollar Cafe, lends authenticity and intimacy. Scenes set here feel like confessions whispered over black coffee. The characters don't just pass through these places, they're anchored to them, as if the dust on their boots tells part of their story. Take the Expo Square Arena in Tulsa, the site of the climactic rodeo event. Its towering steel beams and rows of seats create a grand stage, but also a crucible. Under those harsh arena lights, characters are tested. Here, the camera pulls back to show the scale, a lone rider dwarfed by the echoing crowd, man against beast, legacy against time. The setting becomes both spectacle and sermon. But it's not only the large-scale locations that hold meaning. The interiors of Joe's home, dimly lit, cluttered, heavy with memory, tell their own story. Sunlight filters through aged blinds, dancing across the wooden floors in soft streaks. The colors are muted, warm browns, faded denim, rusted reds. This earth-toned palette gives the film a lived-in texture. It's as though every frame has been gently worn, just like Joe's saddle or the creases in his hands. Cinematographer Dennis Lenore crafts each shot with the precision of a painter. Wide shots of the prairie emphasize isolation and opportunity in the same breath. A lone truck kicking up dust on an endless road becomes a metaphor for escape, or perhaps return. When Lenore shifts to close-ups, every wrinkle, every squint into the sun, carries weight. He leans heavily on natural light, using golden hour hues to bring warmth to scenes of vulnerability, and twilight blues to underscore tension or loss. One powerful example comes during a quiet sequence at dusk. Joe sits on his porch, barely speaking. The camera stays wide, watching him silhouette against a deepening sky. No music, just the creak of the rocking chair. The scene says more than any line of dialogue could. It's a moment suspended in light, color, and stillness. The rodeo scenes, in contrast, crackle with intensity. Lenore and the crew used a blend of handheld cameras and mounted rigs to immerse the viewer in the action. Bulls rear up inches from the lens. Dirt flies. Ropes snap. The editing here mimics the chaos. Jump cuts, fast zooms, dizzying angles. And then, stillness. A rider thrown. The crowd silent. Breath held. These juxtapositions give the film its rhythm, a balance of thunder and hush. Sound design plays a crucial role in heightening this atmosphere. Composer Jeff Russo doesn't rely on sweeping orchestration. Instead, he uses restraint, lonely guitar notes, the occasional brush of pedal steel. The score breathes between moments. In some scenes, it disappears altogether, giving way to ambient sound, wind rustling dry grass, the distant bleat of cattle, a screen door slamming shut. These are the sounds of life continuing, no matter what. At times, the film lets weather tell its own story. A looming storm cloud in the distance signals not just changing skies but shifting emotions. Rain falls during a crucial reconciliation scene, not melodramatic, just steady and cold. The characters' clothes cling to them, soaked, vulnerable. And yet, under that sky, they finally speak honestly. The natural world becomes both backdrop and confessional. Symbolism is woven into the film's visual language. Doorways frame characters in transition. Mirrors reflect moments of self-confrontation. Empty chairs hint at absence and grief. One memorable shot lingers on a pair of boots outside a hospital door, muddy, forgotten, full of unspoken fear. It's these small, quiet images that carry the deepest emotional weight. Lighting is used not only to beautify but to reveal. In one scene, a flashlight flickers in a barn, illuminating family photos nailed to the wall. Dust particles float in the beam like memories too thick to settle. In another, firelight dances across tired faces at a campfire, carving shadows of pain and hope. These moments aren't polished, they're raw, real, human. The visual strategy of the film pays homage to earlier cinematic traditions. There are echoes of Terrence Malick's contemplative landscapes, John Ford's expansive West, and even modern westerns that blur grit and grace. Yet The Last Rodeo finds its own visual voice, intimate yet vast, poetic yet grounded. The storytelling isn't just enhanced by the setting, it's inseparable from it. Joe's journey, from isolation to reconnection, is mirrored in the geography. As he opens up, the camera steps further back. We see more sky, more road, more possibility. When he retreats inward, the lens follows him into shadow, into corners, into silence. There's a particularly striking sequence late in the film where Joe rides alone at dawn, the fields still cloaked in mist. The sound of hooves is muffled. He doesn't speak. The camera follows him in one unbroken shot, wide, majestic, haunting. It's not just a ride. It's a reckoning, a confession, a farewell. To reduce MCU-like urgency, cinematographer Dennis Lenore embraced a hybrid of handheld grit and sweeping wide shots. He opted to stretch arena takes longer, risking camera shake, but gaining authenticity. One night in post-production, editor Tom Costantino watched footage of Joe's boot sliding from the stirrup. They spent an entire day stabilizing that single shot. It became a metaphor for fracture and grit. en.wikipedia.org. 7. Humor and humanity amidst hardship. Behind the scenes, humor softened rough days. One afternoon, McDonough's practical cowboy hat rented blew off during a silo scene. He gave chase into open fields, boots, hat, script in hand, busting up crew in the process. The impromptu chase became a joke for weeks, especially when crew dubbed him Wild Hat. The climactic kiss between McDonough and Ruve? On take number 8. By order 9, McDonough cracked, "Can we get pizza after this?" Everyone laughed. Daughter tears flew, and by take 10, the scene dropped into unconditional authenticity. missanantonio.com +1 theprisreviewed.org +1. 8. Music, editing, and emotional editing wars. Post-production was a battlefield of emotional stakes. Russo's score, built on soft guitar, pedal steel, balanced bleeding silence with emotional cadence. The editor constructed a rhythm. Slow barrel dawn scenes paired with silence, high-octane rodeo with punctuated noise. Yet argument rose on the final hospital reveal. I'm not here for applause. Should we boost music? Shouldn't the moment breathe alone? In the end, they let it breathe, and test screenings wept. They knew they'd gotten it right. 9. Legacy that lingers. After rap, the McDonoughs didn't just go home, they bought into the rodeo itself. Becoming minority owners of the Austin Gamblers PBR team signaled the story's resonance. Angel.com +15 missanantonio.com +15 washingtonpost.com +15. Filmmaking ended on set, but for them, and perhaps the film's mission, it was only just the beginning. The Oklahoma towns, too, felt it. Silver Dollar Cafe began displaying a "We Were in the Movie" sign. Busloads of visitors arrived. Stories of the caring local film crew, scraping ice off cars before sunrise, thanking baristas after shoot, became part of community pride. TulsaWorld.com +2 TulsaWorld.com +2 TulsaWorld.com +2. 10. Overcoming Doubt, Theatrical Release versus Blockbusters. Releasing during Memorial Day weekend placed the film against a Tom Cruise juggernaut. Redditors joked, "Angel cannot expect this to compete with MI." Others defended it as counter-programming. Not bad, could make a ton in August doldrums. Reddit.com +1 Angel.com +1. But the team stood proud. This wasn't about eyeballs, it was about hearts. Early previews showed Cinema Score A. It became clear, sometimes heartfelt resonance outlasts blockbustery spectacle. 11. A filmmaking ethos rooted in respect. What set this production apart wasn't its budget, $8M, or buzz, it was respect. Respect for small towns where crew used local crew hires. Respect for rodeo athletes, training them, listening to their stories, filming them gently. PBR-certified veterinarians monitored the bulls, and when one cracked a barrier, motto became, "Let's not just make a film, let's honor this world." That ethos shaped a production that never felt exploitative. It felt collaborative. A filmmaking legacy etched in dirt and bonds. Today, when the credits roll, you see a film drenched in emotional grit and harvest light. But behind it is a production built on vulnerability, respect, and surprising tenderness. From pulling over on an emotional cliff to embrace faith, to filming cows in muddy pens and sipping diner coffee in tiny towns, from bruises in the ring to kisses at oldest camera take, the set of The Last Rodeo tells a story of its own, of humans riding through storms to remember who they are. It whispered, "Let's make something real." And it did. Farmhouse to the thunder of the Expo Square Arena, setting and emotion fuse, guiding us into a world where money isn't the only currency. It's memory, sacrifice, and hope. Family and generational reconciliation anchor the film's emotional core. Joe Wainwright's journey isn't just a return to the bull circuit, it's a return to his own children and grandson. The tension between him and Sally finds its roots in absent fatherhood. From the moment he reappears, the film is propelled by Joseph's silent guilt and her tightly held guard. As Neal McDonough himself described it, the film reflects themes of family, faith, and resilience, infusing the rodeo narrative with deeper emotional stakes. Billy, however, is the bridge between past and present. 10-year-old but old-souled, his presence softens Joe's resolve, but also steals it in unexpected ways. Billy doesn't just ask questions, he gives meaning. When he tells Joe, "I believe in you," it's more than dialogue. It's the culmination of their relational arc, from hesitating distance to shared hope. Redemption through risk is another beating pulse. Joe left rodeo once under threat of death and shame. Now, he returns despite the risk of permanent injury. His ride becomes sacred, not a bid for fame, but one last offering toward his grandson's health. Critics have highlighted this as more than sports drama. It's a story of dignity recovered through humility and courage. Each bull becomes more than a beast. It represents Joe's past guilt and future stakes. In anthropological terms, rodeo is a rite symbolic of the wild and culture, where man asserts control over nature, but in doing so explores his own wildness, vulnerability, and vulnerability again. Digital Commons, ADU +1 IPL.org +1. On screen, that symbolism is visceral. As dirt flies, horns glint, and Joe hangs on, we feel the pull of every wound he's ever carried. Masculinity, vulnerability, and faith permeate every frame. The rodeo facade is one of machismo, but through Tim Grierson's lens, we see that this is an arena of emotional performance. Connection with animals becomes a connection with self. It demands courage, not just physical, but existential. Reddit.com +3 Medium.com +3 Reddit.com +3. Joe rides not to prove he's still strong, but because strength has evolved into something more fragile and more courageous. Faith isn't overt, but it's steady. McDonough, a devout Catholic, writes a character shaped by quiet prayer, not grand creeds. His actions, not slogans, define his belief. The film unfolds like a retreat. Cowboy hymns and silent church pews, the hush of gritty moments more sacred than any sermon. Legacy. The passing of identity across generations is woven into every relationship. Joe passes his saddle to Billy, not just a sport but a history. That handing over feels poignant, a torchlighting in dust. It echoes Ken Kesey's insight. In Rodeo, horses, strap the man between nature and culture. MySanAntonio.com. And in this story, the legacy isn't power, it's presence. Even Colt Morgan's rivalry embodies this theme. He sees Joe as a relic, yet learns that legacy isn't owned, it's earned through grit, loyalty, and letting go. Wild versus tame threads through the rodeo's symbolism. Bulls buck, ropes tighten, men fall. Wildness tempts us toward control. Anthropology describes rodeo as embodying that tension between nature and culture. Joe's ride is the pivotal moment where the wild within him meets the discipline he's cultivated through love and regret. It's a reckoning, a chance to own his past and direct its future. Suffering, sacrifice, and dignity converge in the spinal injury Joe suffers. Broken bones, broken lives, it all flows together. Redemption here isn't escapism, it's courage in pain. The film doesn't glaze over his injuries. It shows them in hospital rooms, in labored breaths, in his daughter's anguished watching. A tragedy, yes, but also transformation. Symbolic imagery permeates the film's use of setting and visuals. Broken fences echo fractured families. Each repair becomes emotional curve. The barn loft, dust motes floating, becomes a silent confessional. Sunset rides, long shadows trailing behind Joe, metaphorize mortality and redemption. Boots left outside hospital rooms quietly anchor suffering and hope. Such imagery isn't decoration, it's coded poetry, mirroring Joe's inner heartbeat. Wide shots of rodeo arenas, or close-up shadows in doorways, are visual metaphors for human estrangement and connection. Emotional resonance and cinematic impact come from weaving these themes tightly into pacing, tone, and performance. Silence and sound contrast. Walk-throughs of hospital corridors give space, then sudden crowd noise floods us with reality. Jeff Russo's sparse guitar notes carry sorrow, not sentiment. As one critic noted, his score is guitar-driven, earthy, and truthful. Reddit.com +6 Goodreads.com +6 Medium.com +6 Edgebirdie.com +7 Bookie app +7 LiterarySum.com +7. Audiences responded strongly. The film earned an A Cinema score precisely because the emotional realism hit hard, proof that themes of sacrifice and small redemption resonate deeper than spectacle. End Wikipedia.org. Faith as understated compass quietly steers the film. There's no sermon, no prayer voiceover. Instead, spiritual conviction is found in Joe's decisions, returning to the arena, facing his daughter, sacrificing his body, building fences again. In a faith-based way, this is less about miracles, more about messy grace. Fallibility and courage shine brightest when things go wrong. Joe doesn't win the final rodeo, he places second, but walks away richer in love and humility. That second-place finish becomes the narrative's heart, not a loss, but a bridge to redemption. It's an emotional pivot, a recognition that most of life's wins come through survival, not trophies. Nature, renewal, and hope swirl at the film's close. Dusk settles on the Wainwright Ranch sign, home of second chances. The fields glow in sunset tones. Billy rides again, not bulls yet, but a foal. It's new life, possibility, legacy renewed. Collective cultural mirror. The film resonates because it taps into a broader yearning for reunions, redemption, risky love, small acts that prove bigger than sporting triumphs. It reminds us of a rodeo's pathos and its silent spirituality. Man facing beast, struggling with mortality, hoping for salvation in a time-worn heart and two open arms. In more than a movie, it's a meditation about how we wrestle with brokenness, whether we dare to blink and say, "I'll try again," for you. Every theme, from masculinity's true strength, to faith's quiet power, to legacy's tender handoff, is woven through Joe's story, making The Last Rodeo more than film. It becomes mirror, prayer, song. The film opens in silence, long, lingering pans across wind-swept prairies and weathered barns. Cinematographer Dennis Lenore chooses to let frames breathe, capturing golden hour glow that bathes the farmhouse exterior in nostalgia. Close-ups don't just show faces, they expose them, every creased line, every fleeting look, rendered in natural light and soft shadows. It's a visual commitment to authenticity. Once we enter the arena, the techniques shift dramatically. Here, handheld cameras jostle with the energy. Mounted GoPros cling to bulls, bridging the gap between spectator and participant. Aerial angles collapse into the chaos. Ropes snap, hooves strike the dirt, dust kicks into the lens. The effect is visceral. The viewer feels the ride. These aren't slick cinematic moments. They are raw, kinetic pulses of fear, risk, and survival. Critics noted this approach as gritty and authentic, capturing fear and emotional core. Reddit.com. Once the bullfight ends, sound and music invite silence. This film doesn't fill voids, it honors them. In hospital scenes, a faint heart monitor bleeps in place of sweeping orchestration. Composer Jeff Russo employs stripped-down guitar notes, elegance in simplicity. These snippets slide beneath the visuals, amplifying unspoken words and half-heard truths. Editing, overseen by Tom Costantino, rides the tension like a bull rider. Moments of instability, bullets of close-up, shaky frame, dash into extended stillness. One standout moment required a full day of stabilizing a shot where Joe's boot slips from the stirrup. That boot becomes metaphor, fracture, regret, perseverance. Yet these technical flights aren't grandiose, they're quasi-invisible. Audiences may not pinpoint a technique, but they feel it. That unspoken craftsmanship allowed the film to resonate emotionally. Its reception confirms it, a solid A cinema score for emotional authenticity over bombast. Film frames, cinematic palette and composition. Naturalism and symbolism coexist on screen. Dawning light spills into a kitchen, revealing dust-laden photos behind cracked glass, visual shorthand for memory's fragility. Later, expansive twilight rides across prairie roads unfold like confessionals, vows made in silence, visible in gait and posture. Wide shots frame Joe alone, dwarfed by sky and earth. Man humbled, renewed, survivorship etched in landscape. Color grading supports the arc. Warm ambers in flashbacks accompany soft nostalgia. Present-day hospital scenes adopt desaturated gray-greens. As Joe finds love again and Billy's hope rises, light shifts, color deepens, a rekindled earth tone palette. Cyclones, sound and silence. Sound as emotional punctuation is vital here. The hushed tone in Joe and Sally's reunification cuts deeper than dialogue. Silence often succeeds the bullfight, the aftershock of adrenaline. Meanwhile, crowd roars fade into small family noises, chair creaks, steamy coffee mugs, whispered confession. These textures form the film's emotional backbone. Russo's score proves quietly powerful. In early scenes, guitar peals slide through, never overwhelming. A final harmony drifts in during the hospital finale, not triumphant, but comforting. It sustains hope without dictating how to feel. Clapperboard editing, rhythm and pacing. The film balances tension and release like a metronome. Extended family scenes, then rapid cuts across adrenaline-fueled rides. One bull ride sequence was deliberately held on extended take, allowing tension to simmer before the impact. Its editorial restraint yielding visceral intensity. Colt Morgan's confrontation with Joe uses cutting rhythm to intensify. Close-quarters shots, snap edits, harsh verbal rhythm. Contrast that with Billy's quiet waits, frames held by stillness, allowing empathy to build. These pacing choices shape the emotional experience consciously and structurally. Bar chart, box office journey, and distribution strategy. With about an $8 million budget, the film relies on emotional resonance rather than spectacle. en.wikipedia.org. It was positioned as counter-programming in the Memorial Day 2025 weekend, notably challenging Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, but also offering audiences PG-rated. Heart First Fair, Reddit.com +2 appnews.com +2 Reddit.com +2. That decision was debated online. Reddit buzz reflected worry and optimism. Tough competition, yet the slower summer months could favor a sincere drama. It opened to around $5.3 million, falling behind the Tom Cruise juggernaut, but it gained momentum as word of mouth spread. Reddit.com +10 appnews.com +10 Reddit.com +10. Global gross reached about $13.1 million, with domestic receipts around $10, 11 million. Reddit.com +5 and .wikipedia.org +5 Reddit.com +5. For a modestly budgeted, emotionally driven drama, that's a solid return, especially in a theatrical era dominated by franchises. Counterclockwise arrows button crowdfunding and community-driven model. Angel Studios leverages a values-based, community-backed model. Christian audiences and faith-driven viewers act as mini-executive producers. That translated into targeted marketing, die-hard fan bases, and grassroots enthusiasm. Though critics warned of inflated numbers, Angel's release of Homestead sparked box office skepticism. The transparent and supportive model helped this film land real legs. RogerRobert.com +9 Reddit.com +9 Reddit.com +9 Reddit.com +1 CelluloidJunkie.com +1. Speaking head, cultural impact and audience response. Unlike blowout summer blockbusters, this film lingers. Viewers praised its craftsmanship, grounded visuals, restrained soundtrack, emotionally honest performances. Many compared the emotional payoff to a quiet sermon. Healing not through spectacle, but through presence and intention. Test audiences hit the abrupt sob button during hospital reveals. Critics shifted from calling it serviceable melodrama to admiring visceral effectiveness, acknowledging that craftsmanship is about feel as much as form. Technique, atmosphere, emotion, a triad. Asterisk camera. Lenore's mix of epic frames and handheld immediacy captures both scale and vulnerability. Asterisk sound and score. Russo's minimalism punctuates emotional inflection rather than narrating it. Asterisk edit and pacing. Tension builds visually and emotionally. Stillness matters. Asterisk color and light. Visual tone parallels arc, desaturation in despair, richness in hope. Asterisk distribution. Strategic weekend positioning, community-funded support, emotional wings. Memo. Final reflection. This film doesn't advertise technical wizardry, but every choice is deliberate. From boot-slide close-ups to bull camera chaos, from guitar hum to empty porch silence, from green screen silence to barn loft shadows, it's a thread woven into an emotional tapestry. It honors storytelling as shared witness, not spectacle. And box office? The modest success isn't measured in millions. It's measured in the hearts it touched, the dinners where families shared tears and stories, and the belief that dignity, crafted with craft, still resonates. Sunlight shimmers off the bull-riding arena's rails as the cast congregates before the day's first take. Neal McDonough warms up beside Mykelti Williamson, the two sharing nods and brief banter. Williamson, a quiet force as Charlie Williams, leans in. "Joe's gotta find the spark again." McDonough nods, tugs at his weathered hat, and sets his eyes on the chute, ready to channel history and heart. This is a film where the cast does more than act. They become cowboys, fathers, and friends in the trenches. McDonough, who co-wrote, produced, and starred, isn't just playing a role. He's living it. In one interview, he shared how writing the story helped him process a personal moment of vulnerability, a crisis during which he wondered if he'd have answered the call if his wife needed him daily motioned. Com +2 missanantonio.com +2 Washington Post, com +2 metacritic.com +4 screenrant.com +4 Washington Post, com +4. That raw honesty fuels his portrayal of Joe, a man learning that courage isn't just riding bulls, but being present for family. Early mornings on set found McDonough and Williamson practicing together, riding mechanical bulls until calves stiffened and bruises blossomed. Their shared laughter, sweat, occasional groans, evolved into an unspoken shorthand of brotherhood. It's this bond that gives their scenes depth. Charlie's teasing and empathy feels earned, lived, and real. Screen Rant noted this camaraderie as the emotional backbone of the film. Rotten Tomatoes.com +1 Metacritic.com +1. Sarah Jones, who embodies Sally with a fierce, protective edge, was determined not to play the wounded daughter trope. Instead, she handcrafted scenes that walk the line between guarded resolve and quivering inner turmoil. In one shooting moment, Jones asked the camera to linger just a beat longer on her face, just so viewers could feel the weight she carries. That moment made it into the film, unspoken but unforgettable. Christopher McDonald, playing PBR official Jimmy Mac, brought levity and mischief. With his confident swagger, he improvised quips that had crew members cracking up mid-take. One day, as McDonough was strapping on sweat-soaked gear, McDonald chimed, "Better hang on tight, you're not getting out until Sunday." It cracked through the tension, but it stayed, small joy on a tough shoot. The extended PBR clips reveal cameo appearances from real riders like Dalen Swearingen, impressions captured because the cast and crew immersed themselves in the world. McDonough and Avnet did their homework, learning from trainers and stars alike so they could film bull riding scenes that felt lived in, not staged. WashingtonPost.com ScreenRant.com +4n.wikipedia.org +4 WashingtonPost.com +4. In one interview with Moviefone, McDonough said director Jon Avnet valued danger and innocence over polish, encouraging him to be a little scared on set. YouTube.com +14 YouTube.com +14 MissanAntonio.com +14. That tension is visible, his breath tightening, eyes fixed, body teetering on the brink, giving credibility to every gut-wrenching tumble. A sweet behind-the-scenes moment happened on the set of Joe's first crash. As crew reset, Sarah Jones broke tension with a friendly jab. "That took guts." "And ribs." McDonough grimaced dramatically, then smiled, showing they were more family than cast. This cast energized the film's soul, but the audience brought their own stories. On Rotten Tomatoes, viewers gave an astounding 95% rating, citing heartfelt performances and roller coaster emotions. Rotten Tomatoes.com +1 WashingtonPost.com +1. One viewer raved, "Really good movie. Puts you through all your emotions." Rotten Tomatoes.com. Another noted McDonough's eyes delivered volumes. He can show more expressions with his eyes than many actors can reading lines. Facebook.com +2 Metacritic.com +2 YouTube.com +2. That kind of praise echoed on Reddit. The rodeo scenery is beautiful, pacing is languid but never dull. A good example of how well-paced story plus good actors entertain without CGI or stunts. Reddit.com. Even critics gave thanks, with Variety calling it a thoroughly predictable but undeniably engaging faith-based drama, and Washington Post praising its satisfying ride when the bullfighting sequences ignite. Worthiterwoke.com +3 Rotten Tomatoes.com +3 Metacritic.com +3. Immersive interviews revealed even deeper layers. In a chat with Screen Rant, McDonough and Avnet spoke of the stakes behind every choice. Joe's fragility mirrors McDonough's own battle with mental health. Jones revealed Sally's distance reflected real wounds too, guided by fear, not anger. That nuance mattered. In a quieter sit-down on the inside reel, McDonough admitted he nearly started the project 6 months too early, but Avnet helped him pace, balance creative fire with emotional rhythm. YouTube.com +2 Dailymotion.com +2 ScreenRant.com +2. That trust paid dividends on screen. Then there was the infamous T.B. McDonough's first on-screen kiss with his real-life wife. They took 10 takes to get it just right, made all the more awkward for his daughter filming nearby. "Dad, this is gross," she teased, reminding them that sincerity is messy too. MySanAntonio.com. The audience embraced every layer: family drama, bull riding grit, spiritual reflection, with overwhelming warmth. IMDb reviewers called it a well-made movie with a positive message. One even added, "There are a lot worse ways to spend a couple hours." IMDb.com. Metacritic users, averaging 7.0/10, lauded it as pretty darn good, a bit sappy. Enjoyable film worth your time. ScreenRant.com +11, Metacritic.com +11, IMDb.com +11. Many highlighted Williamson's performance as key. His blend of wisdom, humor, and steadfast loyalty anchored emotional punches. A based reviews critic noted it's a step up for Christian movies, with visuals praised and script we've considered better than most faith-driven fare. Worthiterwoke.com. Audience feedback framed the spiritual thread as light, integrated naturally rather than preached. On Facebook, Angel Studios celebrated a 94%, liked it. Audience rate reddit.compassbook.com +1, ncregister.com +1. Viewers posted photos of tissues, cowboy hats, and fist-pumping joy. One wrote, "Y'all showed up, and you loved it." Box office mirrored the love. Competing with a Tom Cruise summer blockbuster, the film held its own, about $5 million opening, growing steadily through word-of-mouth. Facebook.com. The community-backed model worked. Crowds seeking authentic, family-first stories came ready and eager. The cast played a huge role. McDonough, even after enduring physical strain in his late 50s, emerged the reliable center. Williamson brought gravity and laughter in equal measure. Jones embodied fierce timing, honesty, and restraint. McDonough offered comic brightness mixed with scenes that tingled with moral complexity. Behind them, Avnet's direction prioritized openness. Let actors explore, trust their instincts, embrace fear. McDonough's preparation, reciting lines at 3 a.m. based on his wife's sweet suggestion, proved no gimmick. It revealed a man totally present in every scene. en.wikipedia.org.dailymotion.com. As credits rolled, audiences whispered about their favorite moments. A father and daughter reconciling through a silent hug, a grandson daring to hope in soft sunlight, a cowboy brandishing more love than pride. This is not a technical marvel. It doesn't need to be. It's a framed, focused reflection on human resilience. Cast and crew gave their lives to it. Audiences received it with their emotions. In interviews, McDonough said quietly, "We wanted to tell a story that might just remind someone it's not too late." And the reviews tell us he succeeded.